For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Good evening, welcome back to Lessons for Life. It's Sunday night and we are talking about health, homelessness and charity. Charity has obviously been a huge topic for everyone recently because somehow the NHS went from being a state-funded institution to something of a charity. I know everyone's focused on what Boris Johnson has said this evening, but he hasn't really said much. So we are talking to Charlie, who's kindly got in touch with me. I wanted to talk about this subject. Hello, Charlie. Welcome.
Hi, Giuliano.
Thank you so much for getting in touch. Why did you want to talk on this topic in particular? Can I just ask, are you a key worker by any chance?
No, I'm not.
Okay, but you work in the health sector. What's your profession?
Usually working in the charity sector, so I worked for a homeless charity. And now I'm basically working in pageants, raising awareness of health within homelessness.
Okay, yeah, I think obviously what's happened recently has been a crazy time for everyone, but people who are homeless must have had it worse than anyone else. I can't imagine. How?
I'm thinking as well, yeah.
Yeah. So how were you still working in that sector during the lockdown?
No, I wasn't, but I'd already started on my journey, my pageantry journey, already decided that I was going to raise awareness of the lack of healthcare given to homeless people.
Okay. So when did you first start working in that sector? When did this begin for you, and why did you go down that road?
Basically, it was because I have numerous health issues. So I've got borderline personality disorder. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I have asthma, and every year I catch pneumonia because of that asthma, and all of that sort of thing. I was also made homeless in about 2016, and I wasn't getting the support that I needed. During that time, I ended up staying in a St Mungo's hostel, and part of my treatment plan after coming out of hospital for my personality disorder was to get back into a routine, because I found that quite helpful. And so it was having something to do every day. I took up an apprenticeship at St Mungo's while I was a resident, and through that became a receptionist in St Mungo's, and also doing some key worker activities, learning about all the different aspects of supporting homeless people.
Okay, so you wanted to help people that had suffered in a similar way that you had. St Mungo's is a charity we've spoken about before. Is it a Catholic charity? It has a very Catholic sounding name.
No, I mean, if you look into the history of it, it was started by monks, but there's nothing religious about it now. It's not like going to some other charities where they're having you pray before meals and stuff like that. You know, they don't focus around religion at all nowadays.
Okay, so it was founded by monks, but it doesn't really have a Catholic ethos anymore.
No.
That's interesting. I wonder, is it linked to the church at all? Perhaps not. Is faith something important to you?
To me, having faith in something is important to me. It doesn't necessarily have to get down to religion. I mean, you know, I've seen a lot of your interviews, and a lot of it's based around religion.
Yeah, a lot of people love to talk about religion.
people's beliefs. But yeah, I'm not too focused on that. I think it's important to have something to believe in.
Yeah, I think if you've watched my interviews, it'll probably put you off religion for life. Most of them are fanatics. But that's interesting. And during your time, you said you were homeless. Did you resort to spirituality? Did you turn to God? Did it turn you away from God? Some people say, "Oh, why has God done this to me?" What was going on in your heart at that time?
I guess that I didn't really focus too much on God. I mean, as I said, I had a lot of mental health problems. I spent 3 years getting daily treatment from the Maudsley as an outpatient. So, I didn't really have that in my head turn into religion. I had a lot of people, I had a lot of influences around me at that time that were saying, if you pray, if you believe in God. And I can't lie, I did go to a few different religious places of worship at that time, just to see if I got anything from it, and I didn't find that I did.
Okay. Did you gain something from within yourself? Did you say, I believe in a creator or something greater than myself?
Yeah, I believe I wholeheartedly believe in something greater than myself. I can't say what it is, but I mean, there has to be something that's, written all of this for us.
Okay, written. You believe in predestination? Do you believe in destiny?
Yes, I do.
I see. That's interesting. Okay, well, let's talk about St. Mungo's, as you've brought it up. It's a charity. I'm guessing that means they operate due to donations. Is that correct?
Yep, a lot of it's down to donations. I mean, we actively, they had their own fundraising department. You might have seen them on the street fundraising. The staff might do different fundraisers there was one lady, she did a skydive, a group of people did a skydive while I was working there. So they do rely on donations quite heavily, yeah.
The thing that puts me off when these people go around shaking their tin or sometimes, I don't mind that so much, I'll put money in a tin, but if you want me to sign up for something to donate every month, it just seems like a little bit much. It's a bit of a commitment to one charity to say, I'm going to... and then they come back at you and say, oh, would you like to increase what you've been given? You've been given a tenner a month, and they call you up and say, oh, would you like to give us even more of your money?
Yeah, I don't agree with that, especially when you can't pinpoint where that money's going to as well. If you knew that there was one person and they said, okay, your £10 a month feeds this person for a week, and you knew that person and you knew that person was eating every day, then yes. But when they come back and they're asking for more money and you're working hard for this money and you're thinking, yeah, I'm just giving it all away to a company, really know where it's going at all. I don't agree with that either.
In the chat, Ben Grant is saying the charity sector is shady. Some of the biggest charities, the majority of their funding goes to meet the payroll of people whose job it is to fundraise. How can you be I mean, you've worked for a charity, right? Was that your job? It is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I don't think it all goes to the payroll. I mean, there's a separate part from that. The government are paying their part for that. It doesn't all go into just to pay the staff. I have seen places where that money's going. I've seen the way that it gets distributed. I mean, this all gets explained to you on your first day of training.
Okay. Just to go abstract for a moment, I'm just wondering, in an ideal society, would we need charities? Should we have charities? Is it
ideal society?
We've ended up having an old man march up and down his garden to fund the NHS as some kind of charitable act, but that's what the state should be doing, right? Our taxes should be funding that, but somewhere it's gone wrong, and the rich have got richer and the poor have got poorer.
Yeah. I don't know whose decision, that was basically, but I mean, that Captain Tom, he chose to do that. That was something that gave him pleasure. And yeah.
I'm not having a go at him. I mean, all credit to him, but it's a sad day when an old man has to do the job of the state. But
I mean, he didn't have to do it.
No, he didn't.
He
You're
wanted
right.
to do it, but yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that our national insurance, our taxes, they should be paying for these things. And where is the money actually going if it's not paying for the National Health Service?
Well, at the other end of that spectrum, someone did suggest to me, I think they must be very on the right economically, saying that we shouldn't have any state-funded medicine at all, and that actually, if the health sector was in the care of charitable, good Samaritans, philanthropists, as it was before the 1940s, it might actually be better off. I find that very hard to believe, but there are some people who are of the opinion that no, things like care should be charity and charity alone, and if you leave the millionaires to get rich, they will become philanthropic, rather like Bill Gates, who is trying to vaccinate the world. Is he doing it for his own benefit? I don't know. He doesn't get rich writing checks. But how rich can you be? There must come a point when you're rich enough that you want something else. You want to achieve something else, and maybe improving the world's health would be a good thing.
It could be a good thing. It really could be a good thing. I mean, if you're improving the world's health, then there's less of a spread. You're helping people. I mean, that's the good thing about charity, is that you're helping people help themselves, or helping people that can't help themselves.
One of the worrying things about what Bill Gates said was, if we do this correctly, we could see a reduction in the world's population, which is kind of scary.
That is very scary, but then we're still seeing a reduction in the world's population with the coronavirus.
Yes, we are, and maybe a vaccination could do something to prevent that happening. We'll find out. Let me know in the comments if you're going to willfully accept the vaccine from Bill Gates. Maybe he's going to administer it himself. But look, Charlie, I sense that you have some gripes with the industry, some things that you were upset about, or some shortcomings. What are the failings that you wanted to talk about? And in the chat, Craig has mentioned that charity begins at home. He's very right. But yeah, what are some of the issues that you've had, that you've felt maybe you've been let down, or the country's been let down?
Well, one of the main things, and what I'm focusing on with my platform, is that there are so many homeless people out there. No one really asks to be homeless. You get the few that think, I'd rather live off the land than live in a system. But no one really asks to be suffering. And I've seen so many people, as a resident in a hostel and as a worker in a hostel, of people passing through, and they don't have any ID, they don't have a GP, they aren't getting the support that they need, which is something that's missing in the care system. You're getting people that are living on the street that are undiagnosed with both physical and mental health problems, and they don't have any ID, they don't have a passport or driver's license, and they can't go and visit a GP, they can't register.
If you don't have ID, if you don't have an address, it's almost as if you're not a person in many ways.
And then without that, they're
not treated as such
to get the support that they need. So some people have birth certificates and they're told that's not real ID because there's no photo on it, and homeless people can't always afford that. You need these documents to apply for benefits, to pay for the ID so that you can get the support that you need, but you can't do any of that because you had no money in the first place.
This is interesting. I wonder why there's never been a campaign to make it your legal right to have a birth certificate and a passport.
Well, this is exactly what I'm trying to do now. I mean, I didn't have that problem because I've had a passport since I was 13. My grandparents brought me up, and my granddad said that one of the most important documents you can have in your life is a passport. He was St. Lucian and he came over here in, I think, the 40s or 50s.
Windrush generation then.
Yeah. And he made sure that my gran had a passport. She's British. She made sure that my gran had a passport. I had a passport. And I never used it before I was 19. But the fact is it was there. And then since then, I've just renewed it every time I needed to. And there's so many people that I met that didn't have that. You can't open a bank account to get your benefits. The government have now stopped post office accounts.
Is that right? Are there no more post office accounts?
No, they've stopped those.
Wow.
They've been saying for about 2 or 3 years they're going to stop being able to pay benefits into post office accounts, and now they're saying none at all. You can't pay your benefits into post office accounts. They want to make them obsolete.
Well, this is again something that's fallen into the hands of the private sector. It was the Royal Mail, and it's now the Post Office. We need to renationalise the postal service. It seems to me this must have been about profit. And if everything is done for profit, it can have huge, costly effects to the population, especially with healthcare, and especially when it comes to the suspicion that some people have. I know in the chat, Craig was saying, we have the right to choose. It's my body. I don't want any foreign objects entering it. That's a reference, I think, to the vaccines. Because there have been people that have scammed the third world and tried to make money off vaccines that didn't do what they were meant to do. That's why people have the suspicion about vaccines in general. But as a form of medical practice, vaccination does work. That doesn't mean that every vaccination will be a good one or will be from someone with your best interests at heart. I think we have to look at that, each case on its merits, but we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
And what works for one person might not work for another person. This is what they're not understanding. They're saying, okay, we're going to put this vaccine out. This vaccine is going to work. It might work for 98% of the world's population, but it might not agree with the other 2%. Well,
that's an interesting one. Well, the thing is, when you've got something like a virus, which is spreading so rapidly, at what point do we let your rights as an individual impede upon the rights of the community? Or to use, for want of a better term, the herd. I know we talked a lot about herd immunity, which was essentially just the government acknowledging that, well, sorry, a lot of old people might die, but so what? At what point does the rights of the individual supersede that of our need to survive as a community? I don't know. That's maybe a debate for another night. But
I was going to say that's a question for your viewers.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and anyone is welcome to put me straight on this one. 07491751203 if you differ with me. And Craig is saying, what rights? We have no rights, just make believe. Well, I wonder what rights we have. We've pointed out that we don't have rights necessarily to a passport. I think we do get a birth certificate for free.
We get a birth certificate for free, but what I want is I understand passports are very expensive, and for national security, they might not just be able to hand passports out to people when they're 16. But I didn't see any problem with us getting our national insurance cards at 16. Something like that is photo evidence that you replace every 10 years would be suitable as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, that's true.
For every British person. When we were, they don't hand out the cards anymore. The little blue and red cards that we had, they just print your number on a piece of paper and send it to you now.
Is that right? Wow. I was just thinking. You mentioned you have some background in the Caribbean, and your grandfather was very particular to make sure that your family were issued with documents. Was there anyone in your family that was hurt by the Windrush scandal? It sounds like your grandfather may have essentially insured against it, but there were stories of people born in this country, born and bred over here, who wound up on some technicality not having a passport and being faced with deportation.
Luckily for me, my granddad has passed away by the time that scandal came about, or luckily for him even. No one in my family had that issue because, I mean, my mum, my aunt, my uncles, they were all born here. As I said, my grandmother, she was British. So we all had British passports. There was no issue. I mean, my dad's Jamaican as well, and he came over, I think, in the 70s, and he had no issues.
Okay. Yeah, I always assumed that being born in a country was enough to give you citizenship of that country, but it is apparently not as simple as that. And
no, it's really not. And that was another thing that I saw while working in the hostels. You know, there, last week you spoke about someone that had met a policeman, and it had something to do with St. Mungo's, and they were trying to get them deported back to the country that they came from. I'll touch on that in a second, but I mean, I saw people that came through St. Mungo's that were born in different countries, and in Europe, and moved to another country as a child, and then came to England as an adult, and they didn't know where to send them. They had no citizenship in any of those three countries.
Wow.
Because of moving about, you know, before the birth was registered, you've moved somewhere else, but you're born in one country, and then as an adult, you've gone to another country, and yeah, it's just difficult. Some people just don't have the chance to actually have a recognized citizenship.
Yeah, it's crazy. These stateless people. I believe the UN Charter of Human Rights mentions that everyone has the right to citizenship of a country, but many people are born in the grey area. I mean, what do you think should give someone the right to citizenship in a country?
Being born in that country. I think being born in that country, or living somewhere for a certain number of years, because I mean, you know, like if you go to America, if you live there for a certain number of years, you can, it's a lot longer than the UK one. I think the UK one, you just do the life in the UK test, don't you?
In America, they talk about getting a green card.
Yeah, but being born in a country, I think you should become a citizen of that country.
Yeah, I would have thought so, and I can't believe that's not the case. What about if your parents or grandparents come from there? I mean, how far back do you want to take it?
I don't think that should give you a citizenship to that country. I mean, I wouldn't turn around and say I'm Jamaican. I wouldn't expect to just be able to go to Jamaica and build a house, or, you know, I wouldn't expect like say my mum to be able to go to St. Lucia when my mum was alive, be able to go to St. Lucia and, if they've got benefits over there, just claim their benefits there. I don't think if you haven't paid into that tax system,
so
because you should be able to.
Even though it's in your heritage, I mean, technically you might be allowed to. I think it might well entitle you to a citizenship.
Yeah, see, I don't actually think that you should automatically get citizenship. If you could get a part citizenship, I mean, my gran had dual citizenship because she was married to my granddad, so she had a dual citizenship passport, which was St. Lucian and the United Kingdom, but my granddad refused to have dual citizenship. Once he got his British passport, as far as he was concerned, he was British.
Well, that's the thing. Back then, all these British colonies, I think the people sort of thought of themselves. I mean, I'm generalising now, but I get the sense that people aspired to be British in the sense that they were part of the British Empire. And why would you need a second nationality? But now that that's all dissolved and being part of the Commonwealth doesn't mean that much anymore. It's all different. In the conversation going on here, BA is saying passports, ? There's an interesting one, BA. When will you be entitled to a Swedish passport? This is a British friend of mine who went to make it big in Scandinavia, and he went on to become one of their top personal trainers. But I wonder, is he entitled to a Swedish passport? And I wonder what Brexit has done to that. We've gone off topic slightly, Charlie. Craig wants us to talk about health and homelessness. There's too many interesting things to talk about. But yeah, health and homelessness. I mean, where do we start with that? I'm guessing the biggest threat to the health of the homeless would be nutrition, but you might know better than I. What's the biggest problem when it comes to health and homelessness?
The biggest problem is, as I said before, is not being able to access services that they need to be in. There's a lot of people out there. Nutrition is a huge one, but there are plenty of ways to get food. Charities aside, there's your average people that will go out, make food for the homeless. There's soup kitchens. Like, I know that there's a few of them around. There's one in Brixton that was that came out a few years ago. A man called Solomon established that. There's so many places to get that, but when it comes to other health services, for example, there's a lot of people out there that have mental health problems and they don't have them diagnosed. So someone being rude, loud, disorderly on the street might just seem as if they're just a bad person when they're really not. They have an undiagnosed mental health condition.
Do you think our NHS, as great as it has been for almost 70 years, over 70 years, are they as strong on diagnosing and treating and helping people with mental illness as they are with physical illness?
No.
And why would that be? Is that a misunderstood area of health and well-being?
It's not exactly misunderstood, but there's been so many years that they don't know all of the diagnoses, and there's umbrella terms. Like, as I said, I've got a borderline personality disorder, and
what do you mind telling us what that means? If that's not too personal, what does that mean? Personality disorder.
Personality disorder, it is an umbrella term. So basically, people that have got schizophrenia, bipolar, body dysmorphia, it covers a lot of different things, and no one's symptoms are exactly the same.
So is personality disorder a particular disorder, or there are types of disorders, including the ones you just mentioned?
It's counted as a particular disorder, but all of these other ones fall underneath it. So when I was in hospital for it, we all got diagnosed with, there was about 30 of us, we all got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. But
so borderline, that means it's not as severe as some people have it.
No, it actually, the borderline is you can't pinpoint it to an exact diagnosis. Okay. So, for example, one person may be told that they're bipolar, but they also have traits as that someone with dissociative personality disorder has. Someone might be anorexic and they might have traits as someone with schizophrenia.
Okay.
That's the borderline, that it's not textbook.
Okay. And how does this relate to cognitive conditions? I'm thinking ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. Are they more biological, or is mental illness, can it be equally biological? I know people talk about having a chemical imbalance, perhaps. It seems to me...
I believe it can be equal.
Okay.
Because recently I found out that my younger sister also has borderline personality disorder. Mm-hmm. She's my sister. We've got the same dad. Okay. And so we've come to the thinking that it must be something going through my dad's family.
Genetic, maybe.
There's nothing genetically showing in my mum's family or her mum's family, but we're two siblings that have both got it in the same family.
So from your understanding, I mean, I've heard anyone can become mentally ill. I can happen to me, can happen to you, and we can recover from it. But are you saying there might be a biological predisposition making you more susceptible to something like that happening?
Yep, there could be. Okay. There could be. I mean, I'm no doctor, so I haven't done all the tests. Absolutely. I can't diagnose people, but I do think that there could be something genetic. But anyone, as you said, anyone can become mentally ill. Depression can affect anyone. Anxiety can affect anyone at any stage of your life. Mm. It doesn't need to even be something that you know is triggering you. It could be something deep in your subconscious, and it affects you all of a sudden.
Wow. In the chat, Craig is asking, where is all the cash going? All the money they collect, yet still so many homeless go rent a building for a year with the donations and get people off the street. The system is a shambles.
The system is a shambles. I do agree with Craig with that.
Okay. And is there any particular corruption that you can expose, that you want to go in? Whichever direction you want to go in, Charlie.
It's not so much exposing, it's just making them aware that there's something not right. I mean, these charities, they do help a lot of people, but, just imagine yourself, you're a teenager, you've just become homeless for whatever reason. It could be a family breakdown, you could have been abused, you could have just lost your job, you could have been staying with someone that has lost their house. It could have been anything. You end up on the streets. Where do you go? They're expecting people to just go to them and be like, I'm homeless, I need help. But you're in distress at that time. Where do you go? No one plans to be in that state. And if you don't know where to go, you just learn to survive.
Okay, I'm going to make a statement now, and it might be incorrect. It's my perception that there are more male homeless people than female. More homeless men than women. Why are you agreeing? Why do you think that is?
That's because of two different things. So basically, there's a lot more chances for a woman to get the support that she needs because she's vulnerable. And also psychologically, women tend to seek help more often than men do. So if a man's got a problem, he might not go and tell someone that he's got a problem.
Do you think men are shamed into not asking for help?
Yeah, and it's been like that for centuries. You know, men psychologically are like, we've got to work something out here. This is what we've got to do, and then you don't ask for help. So you could be going on this journey, and there could be all of these signs along the way saying, you know, free food here, you know, free clothing here, and you're not seeing them because you're just focusing on what you've got to do to survive. I mean, going back to the mental health sort of thing, when I was in hospital, out of 30 people, we had a maximum of 2 or 3 men in our group at one time, and that's because they're not going to the GP and saying to the GP, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm self-harming, I need help, for them to get these diagnoses.
Do you use the term toxic masculinity? I know BA in the chat is always complaining about that, that men can be their own worst nightmare. What about the differences in psychology of men and women? The coronavirus is hitting men harder than women. Do you think that's physiological? Is that psychological? Are they not taking the day off when they need to? Are they not going to the doctors when they need to? Why are men succumbing to it more so than women?
That is something that I can't give you a definite answer on, but if I was taking a guess, it could be because of exactly that. You know, they've got a wife at home and their wife is pregnant, and they know that they've got to go out and do the shopping, and, you know, they end up getting sick. It could be because they're not taking as many precautions. It could be a range of different things, or it could just be in the biological build-up of a male, that the virus is attacking them more. Like I've seen recently, it's attacking more people of ethnic minorities, and
yes,
that doesn't exactly make sense to me, but it's happening.
Okay, we'll address that in a minute. We might make sense of it. In the chat, Hassan Radwan is asking, what is the caller's view of antidepressants and also antipsychotic medication? Charlie, have you got any view on antidepressants or antipsychotic medication?
They work.
Do they?
My view is that they work. They might not work for everyone. I find that they work for me. I've seen different people who they do work for. I don't believe that someone that has a long-term mental illness ever gets fully better. They learn how to manage things. I don't think that antidepressants fix people, which is what a lot of people believe. If I'm on antipsychotics or antidepressants for 6 months, my life should get better.
So they manage the symptoms. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Then
they help you, make you think more clearly, that you can learn how to manage your own symptoms.
Brian Cannot Tell is saying drugs mask symptoms. Are they really working then? I'm just thinking that, you know, something like these heroin substitutes work in the sense that they get the addict off the heroin, but they're still addicted to something. Real healing would come from overcoming the addiction, right? And again, I'm not a doctor, as Donald Trump says. I'm not a doctor. Someone with a mental illness needs some kind of healing that might not come from a pill, I think. masking the symptoms, putting a plaster on it, won't actually address whatever it is that's gone wrong. And to just add on that note, Hassan Radwan is sharing with us the fact that his son suffers from schizophrenia and is on clozapine. It's a horrible drug, but we're between a rock and a hard place. Yeah, this is the awful dilemma that people end up facing. Take a psychoactive drug to manage their symptoms, or suffer. Can I hear my own voice? I don't know.
With that, I think it's not exactly masking. I mean, as an adult, as a child, it could be a bit different, but as an adult that got diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and a personality disorder, I find it just allows me to think more clearly. Medication on its own doesn't work. On its own, it doesn't work. It makes you feel good for a few days, but then you don't know what to do with your time because you're used to overthinking or hearing voices, and it just doesn't work on its own. You do need some kind of treatment plan.
Something else as well, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, as I say, look, I am not an expert on this. I've had experience with children who are taking Ritalin. It's another psychoactive drug given to kids who've got ADHD, that's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and unfortunately it works. But every drug has side effects, and you're pumping kids' brains full of chemicals. You must be having another negative consequence as well. And Julia in the chat has said that there are some interesting studies done on diet and gut health and schizophrenia. Might be worth looking into. Yeah, I've heard gut health mentioned even in regards to autism, which is a learning disability, and I would have thought would be very much cognitive. It's not psychological, it's physical as such. We've got a call anyway. Let's take the caller and see who this is. Hello, caller.
Hello?
Turn your TV down and welcome. Who's this?
My apologies. Hi there. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How you doing, Mac? Mac, you're through to myself, and we've got Charlie on the line as well. We started off with homelessness, but we're talking about mental health. You're through to Charlie.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last bit.
I'm saying you're through to Charlie, who's our guest today. You can have a chat with her.
Yeah. No, charity work I think is very helpful. Just to let you know, I have a friend who does a charity called Who Is Hussein, and what he does is he actually goes around. He gathers money from people, and then he obviously goes around to the homeless people and offer them food. At the same time,
At the same time, he tells them about his religion, by any chance?
I just wanted to obviously put that out there.
No, I appreciate that. I'm sure
helpful.
I'm sure it's wonderful work, but it does sound like a bit of an advert for religion if he's calling it Who Is Hussein.
Well, they're using that. Well, he's obviously using that event in time to try and. At the end of the day, he sacrificed so many, like his life and his children. So for us to get that message across, we have to obviously do it in a way, but show his compassion at the same time. Now, if giving food to the homeless is a way of showing compassion, what more? I mean, what other ways? Because that's what Hussein would be about. In that state, he would obviously, even if he doesn't have anything, that's how the Prophet would give the Prophet himself would give his food away to the homeless.
Rightly so, and all true followers of religion would agree with that. Charlie, I know you were a bit disaffected with religion. In terms of charity, are there any charities you can say that you came across that have got it right, are doing the right thing? We are not so keen on St. Mungo's. Are there any charities that you thought hit the right note.
Well, all charities, as long as
Mac, I want to hear from Charlie. Hold on. Just want Charlie to answer that.
these charities,
I think Shelter's doing a great job. They're helping a lot of people. They always have. I mean, they've stopped putting people in emergency accommodation overnight, which was really helpful. But
sorry,
they're
Charlie,
giving people advice. They're supporting people.
1 minute, Mac. Shelter. Okay, I volunteered for Shelter at Christmas one time, and I have to say, it was shocking. I thought I was volunteering to do a bit of feel-good Christmas fun, and it hit me the real sort of dilemma that these people are in. They are going through hell, and it's not just a case of have a Merry Christmas. I'm going to go home and feel good. And I also have distributed food to the homeless at Christmas, but that's probably something I should be doing much more regularly than once a year. Sorry, Mac, you're back in. We interrupted you there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Everything you're saying is true. It's just obviously what I was trying to get to the point is it's a good thing that Christmas times we go and we make sure they're fed, but like I said, it's helping them to get back on their feet. That's the whole point. That's the whole purpose. That's like, you might feed them like I said to you, you can either feed a man a fish for 1 day and he's fed for 1 day, but you can either teach him how to fish so he can feed him for the rest of his life, meaning help that person or individual see where he is in his life. So their help should go a bit deeper than that. But does that make sense?
Definitely. In the chat, Craig's mentioned that CBD has changed my mood, my appetite is back, my thought process is clear, it's great. CBD, that's a derivative of cannabis. Mac, are there any herbal remedies that you would mention that are good for calming people down? I often have a chamomile tea.
I'm sure listening to a bit of Bob Marley and having maybe a Bob Marley type of zoo.
We don't encourage illegal activity on this show, but thanks for that, Mac. Thank you. No, it's all good.
I don't condone that kind of stuff.
You don't do that anymore.
I was just saying, CBD can help epilepsy, or it can help if you other symptoms that you may have. So the CBD oil can be helpful if you have severe epilepsy, for example.
It's strange that CBD has been so praised for its remedies for things like you mentioned, epilepsy, and also the calming effect. And it's a derivative of cannabis without the THC. But the real stuff actually has the opposite effect, and people end up severely paranoid, right?
I agree with that wholly.
And the worst one, which is now on the streets, the synthetic version of cannabis, spice, I believe has the worst effect of all and is more addictive.
That's the most destructive of the three.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously we haven't really mentioned it much, but drugs are a problem. Addiction is a problem.
The CBD is the cannabinoid, that's where, because in our brain we have this receptors are called the cannabinoid receptor, or CBD receptors, and these help. Well, so the reason why you have fit, because there's misfunctioning of your electrons in your brain, and that these CBD kind of obviously helps the receptors in a way. I can't go into depth scientifically, but just to give you an idea, yeah, it does help certain people with certain problems, especially with epilepsy and anxiety as well.
Mac, my last question to you before we free up the line: will you be accepting the vaccine?
I have to do. You see, my approach and advice would be taking things blindly, or even doing your prayers blindly doesn't mean you have to understand everything. Like,
we don't follow blindly.
You need to understand if you're going to have the vaccination, what the effects are. I mean, you just basically need to do your research, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I can't give a definite answer until there's a lot more studies done, not just from one avenue, perhaps multiple avenues, and that obviously coming to a conclusion at the end of it. But ideally, that's what I mean. I can't say at the moment, but until I do my further research on it and see the science behind it, then I can obviously establish whether or not it's a good idea. But I don't. If what they're saying to you makes sense, the science behind it, then yeah, vaccinations could be good. I mean, they got rid of lupus, or they managed polio.
Yeah, that's right.
They've managed to
many diseases were wiped out.
Injections, they got rid of polio.
That's right. All right, Mac, thank you very much for your call, sir.
No worries.
Nice one, brother. Thank you.
Good show.
There goes Mac there. Yeah, you're still with us, Charlie?
Yep.
Good stuff. DJ Rustler is saying that viruses mutate. Yes, we know that. But we're focusing on mental health and homelessness and a charity. And I just want to, for the last 10 minutes, go on the topic of charity. And you touched upon earlier what happened when St. Mungo's were cooperating with the police to deport people. Can you shed any light on what happened with that and why that would be? Why would a charity have any business working with the police to deport people?
Okay, so basically what not many people know is that there's a department in St. Mungo's which is called Roots Home. Basically, Roots Home, the name itself sounds quite bad. It sounds like it's deporting people home, but basically it's
and it sounds like it's deporting black people home. Do you know? That's what I heard when I heard that.
Sorry?
That's what I had. The association with that. It must be because of the TV series. But yeah, what is Roots Home?
Oh, okay. For a start, it's Roots as in ROUTS, as in the way.
Well, yeah, but okay. But you can see can you see how my mind worked there? I went straight to Kunta Kinte. But
that's what my head went to the first time I heard it as well. But basically, they support people that weren't born here. So basically, there's a lot of people that end up in the UK, whether they chose to come here. There's some people that, came here willingly and the life wasn't what they expected it to be. There's some people that, get trafficked here and stuff like that. They work with people to either settle here or to go back. I mean, when I was working with Roots Home, I didn't work for them. I worked for St. Mungo's, but in the St. Mungo's I worked in, they had their own office, and we had a lot of Polish people, and many of them couldn't speak English at all. A lot of them ended up on the streets, being alcoholics. Some of them were addicted mainly to cannabis. They weren't really too much on Class A's or anything like that. But some of them wanted to get support to go back home to their families. They didn't have the money to do that, and you can't just rock up to an airport and be like, I want to go home. Some of them wanted to stay here, and Roots Home would help them get their stay, basically, help them get their passports and so on and so forth. It isn't all about...
I would guess Polish people, before Brexit, it might have changed now, had the right to stay here as EU citizens. I do know of some people from further afield who did get deported and turned around and said, well, at least they paid for my ticket. I got sent home for free. But that is a strange scenario for the EU citizens who cannot so easily stay or go home. I can see how they're sort of stuck in the middle.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole point of Roots Home was to help them explore their options for the EU citizens. For the rest of the world, it was basically getting them support in, getting a solicitor, or, just helping them be able to settle here, or giving them the option of going home, which they would still end up paying for their ticket to go home.
But is there an agenda? Is someone driving this push to send people home?
No.
No, it's not one way or the other.
No, it's more giving them an option. I mean, obviously, if someone came here and they began committing crimes, and the police were saying, "Oh, if you see this person, you have to let us know," then they might step in and be like, "You're being deported. We've been asked by the police to let you know." That's them law abiding. I mean, to be quite honest, it's up to the individual person. If you worked for them, you might turn around and say, "Well, I'm not helping the police find this person. That's their job."
And this Roots Home, this was an initiative from within St Mungo's, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It is a branch of St Mungo's.
Okay.
St Mungo's have got, Roots Home. They've got No Second Night Out. They've got all of their basically sister companies. It's all under one umbrella name. It's all St Mungo's.
Wow. In the chat, Craig's mentioning Scots Care are an amazing charity. I happen to know a little bit about them. Is there
they're a brilliant charity.
Is there a disproportionate number of Scottish people living homeless in, for example, London?
There is. I mean, considering that they're British citizens, there are so many Scottish homeless people within London. I mean, as a child, the first homeless person that I ever remember meeting was Scottish.
And is this essentially a case that, well, Scotland is poorer than England, and poor people will often gravitate towards capitals where there's more opportunity for work, there's more money, or there's perceived to be more money, and that's why there's a lot of Scottish people homeless in London?
Yeah, it's the Dick Whittington mind frame, isn't it?
Yeah, paved with gold.
Paved with gold.
Yeah.
And you basically, everyone wants to go to London, and then they get to London and then realise it's overcrowded, there's no housing, there's no jobs.
It's a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
I've also noticed a lot of homeless people on the coast.
Yeah.
I don't know if that...
No.
And is that from London? Is it on to Brighton? Is that the next stop? Why would there be so many people living homeless near the coast?
It's a bit different. A lot of people that are living by the coast, they've got a different reason for becoming homeless. So their reason is normally because they're gay.
Really?
Yeah. So basically, Brighton's a big town where people that are gay flock to, and they end up being street homeless down there.
People whose family have turned them away because they've come out?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do that because of the gays thing. They think, okay, we'll go to Brighton. The other reason that a lot of homeless people end up going to Brighton is because there's a lot of cash in hand work.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, when it comes to the summertime, someone might have a stall up. You could get a little bit of cash in hand work, which would be harder to do in London.
Well,
but the majority of homeless people that are there are homosexual.
Again, to bring it back to the dreaded coronavirus, we're headed for a cashless society, apparently. This will...
I mean, that doesn't affect me because I use my debit card for everything. The odds of finding me
contactless,
very slim.
Well, that's good. That's good for you, but it is another...
Contactless queen.
Yeah, up to £30. But it is another step, a direction that we're going in that will hit certain sections of our society harder than others.
Yeah, once again, there'll be no money being given to homeless people on the streets because no one's going to have cash. There will be homeless people that don't have a huge bank balance, that won't be able, they don't even have a bank account. They won't be able to get bank accounts because they've got no ID. They won't be able to get benefits because they've got no ID.
Yeah, again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier on, and DJ Rustler's saying no cash, no barter, no money given to the homeless. Yeah, we're heading to a very cold society where people will be reduced to numbers, possibly. Just a statistic. Look, Charlie, I really want to thank you for getting in touch with me. I think this has been a superb topic, and we'll probably have to go back to it and unpick some of the other issues that have come up as we've been chatting. But I really appreciate the call. Are you back to normal? What has Boris's news this evening meant for you?
No change for me. I'm still in lockdown because obviously, as I said, diabetic, asthmatic. So going a little bit mad being trapped in my house all day long, but there's no change for me.
Okay. Well, you hang in there and look after yourself, and
Thank you for having me.
we'll do this again soon. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye. That was Charlie. Yeah, it's a lot of important subjects we touched upon there. In the chat, Craig is mentioning the dreaded depopulation agenda. Yeah, I mean, I thought the elites wanted to make money from us. I thought they wanted to enslave us so that we could work for them, but apparently not. Apparently some people are expendable. Maybe that's the people that are no longer of working age. Has this been nothing but a cull on our elderly population? Was that what Boris Johnson was thinking about? What was going through his mind when he said, we'll just have to go for herd immunity? DJ Rustler is imploring us to use cash more. Yeah, and forget cash. What about bartering? What about offering to do your neighbour's lawn in exchange for them making you dinner or something? Let's work together. Let's do away with the need for their fake money, which is nothing but a number on the screen, and go back to trading things with actual value. Goods and services, because that's the scam. They take your goods off you and give you fake numbers on a screen instead. Well, once again, it's been marvellous for me. It's been Lessons for Life, and we'll do it all again soon. Peace and love to Hassan Radwan and the rest of you. We were here and we are gone. Laters.